Last year, I made a video on how we need more easy puzzle games, and I praised titles like Cocoon, Chants of Sennaar, and Isles of the Sea and Sky for being accessible for someone like me who often felt too dumb to engage with the genre. They did a great job of easing me into the challenge and making me feel clever along the way, and I know that's all thanks to their tremendous game design, not my wicked smarts. But another great byproduct of playing these games is that it made me feel better equipped when some harder puzzle titles came onto my radar, and in turn let me have some of my favorite gaming experiences of 2025 in both Blue Prince and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. These two are similar in a lot of ways, but also diverge in some key areas that I really want to discuss. So let's start with how Blue Prince helped to redefine how I view puzzle games. For the uninitiated, Blue Prince, which is a great pun that took me way too long to realize, is about reaching the inmost chamber of your grand uncle's mansion in order to receive your inheritance. But this is much harder than it sounds because not only does the layout of the mansion change each and every day, but you are the one drafting the rooms as you explore, so you need to make sure you even have a path that allows you to reach the elusive Room 46. The first problem you discover is that you have a limited number of steps you're allowed in a single day, and this ticks down for every room you enter or backtrack through. So you need to be strategic about when to turn around or making sure doorways connect to make traversal less linear. On top of this, there are certain rooms that will require gems to place down or doors that use keys to unlock. So there are multiple resources to manage while you carefully plot your route toward the back of the manor. Luckily, there are also lots of aids to help you out, like bedrooms to increase your number of steps, storage closets with various goodies, shops to buy items from, and even the security room to unlock keycard doors remotely. But it quickly becomes apparent that there is so much more going on here than simply the mechanics of finding Room 46. Early on, it tells you that Blue Prince is a game best played with a notebook, so you can write down anything that might be helpful. And boy did I. You'll uncover notes between family members or staff of the estate, encounter puzzle rooms that give you clues for future puzzles, find safes to unlock, sticky notes all over the place. There are so many threads to unravel that it can be extremely overwhelming if you don't have a central place to keep all of that knowledge. And one of the most satisfying aspects here is watching the seemingly random assortment of information come together to solve the overall mystery. And I think this is a large reason why Blue Prince feels so enthralling. Because there are so many rabbit holes to go down simultaneously, the random nature of placing down rooms didn't feel overly cumbersome, because I can always follow the lead that makes the most sense for my current run. Sure, I'll have some other pieces in the back of my mind, but depending on how the day's layout comes together, I can decide which goal I want to pursue. Like, what happens if I turn on the power to the garage door and have a garage to visit in the same day? Or finally getting a sledgehammer on a day where I place a room with a breakable wall. There's also lots of progression that saves even when a day resets. So if you discover part of a solution and write down the answer, or find one of several nozzles to unlock a secret path, you don't have to do things consecutively. And some of these findings even increase your starting resources, which allow you to search farther much easier. I really like that you can explore outside the mansion as well, and there are just as many secrets here as inside. It felt like there was always something to work toward and new discoveries waiting around every corner. But be warned, this game will try to trick you a lot. There are so many red herrings that you may not even know are red herrings until you find a new piece of information. Like, maybe the biggest slap in the face is when you finally reach the antechamber, only to realize there are no doors to the room at all. You need to find another way to open them. So the deeper you dig, the more valuable a brand new room you've never seen before becomes, because it will always have some nugget of information, no matter how small, that helps paint the bigger picture. Probably the biggest aha moment for me was when I discovered the secret about the paintings in each room. It meant that even if I'd seen a room a dozen times before, I now can look at it in a new way. And it was less about which specific room I selected, and more about getting to a location on the overall grid of the mansion. I would sit and stare at this picture of a bath for minutes at a time without finding the answer, but then continue thinking about it even when I wasn't playing. until eventually I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Oh my god, it's not a bath, it's a tub." If you know, you know. It was straight up infecting my brain. I was hooked. And all the while, you're developing new strategies to make your journey that much more efficient, like stocking up on resources early, putting dead ends in the corners since you need to turn around anyway, saving rooms with multiple pathways for later on so you don't get locked out of proceeding, or if you do have a key card, to increase the number of locked doors so you don't waste your keys on standard ones. There's so much scaffolding that sets you up for success in little increments, you may not even notice that you're learning the intricacies of the mansion inside and out. But eventually you know all the steps you need to do, and it's just about putting that knowledge to the test in execution. When I finally beat Blue Prince and solved everything required to reach room 46, my heart was racing. I had barely completed it with a few steps to spare. There's just no other feeling like it. This is the reason I play video games. But to my surprise, there was still so much I hadn't discovered after reaching this goal. So many loose threads still swirling in my head. And after checking a few quick guides to see what I was missing, it turns out there's like double the content or more in the post-game, which is absolutely bonkers. There's even a bunch of trophies and new rooms that only show up after you've completed the game. So I continued trying to find as many secrets as I possibly could. Unfortunately, I do think after you beat the main objective is when Blue Prince's limitations start to show more plainly. The biggest complaint I've heard from other players is the random nature of what rooms will appear, because when you already know what you need to do, it just comes down to luck of the draw. You can unlock ways to increase the odds of certain rooms appearing or letting you re-roll your options, but it still comes down to what you're given once you've maximized your potential. And I didn't really feel this way when beating the main story, but it did start to wear on me when going for these secondary goals. For example, to solve a puzzle in the laboratory, I needed to reroute power to it from the boiler room. But that means that I needed both the boiler room, a rare find on its own, and the laboratory to be directly next to each other, which had a noticeably low chance of happening. So as my options of things to solve started to dwindle, it got more and more grating when it just didn't work out and I'd have to repetitively start the day over. Don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed Blue Prince for several hours after rolling credits, but I do see why this complaint became so prevalent. And I personally lost a lot of motivation since I'd completed the main objective the game had set out for me. Finding anything else would just be for curiosity's sake, not any real tangible reward. I know there are quite a few mysteries I had left unsolved, but the requirements to achieve them would have taken even more repetition and chance, so I was satisfied to leave it at that. But if you had similar thoughts, that Blue Prince would have been better if there was less reliance on its random nature, and you haven't played Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, boy do I have some news for you. I'm not exactly sure why I didn't play Lorelei when it was first released. I loved both Simogo's previous titles, Sayonara Wild Hearts and Yearwalk, so it must have been intimidation of the puzzle label that kept me away. Which is too bad because it's essentially on par with Blue Prince's quality and has all the same elements that make it great, but without any of the RNG that turned off certain players. In fact, after playing it for myself, it actually reminded me more of the puzzle box world design of Resident Evil, but without any of the zombies, which I think would have gotten me to play it a lot sooner if it was pitched to me like that. You play as Signorina, who's investigating a murder that occurred at a hotel out in the middle of the woods. And as you explore, you'll find seemingly endless amounts of puzzles that give you items, clues, or information that lead to unlocking other puzzles and more floors of the hotel. You'll meet creepy apparitions, receive cryptic phone calls, and get bizarre tools that you may not even know what they're used for until several hours down the road. Something Lorelei does that Blue Prince would have greatly benefited from is provide all the notes of anything you've interacted with in a journal in the main menu for later reference, which came in handy way more often than I expected. Don't worry, I learned from Blue Prince to also keep my own separate notes, and fun fact, I don't mind actually showing this to you because the solutions to puzzles in Lorelei are randomized, so that every player's experience is unique and you can't simply look up the answers. If I got stuck and wasn't sure the next place to go, I would always consult the photographic memory. And I'm so glad this was included because, again, unlike Blue Prince, the names and dates you encounter are much more than flavor text here. They play a pivotal role in solving the main mystery. You'll start to see patterns of repeating numbers, or is it a date, that connect with specific characters and what happened to them. And all of these are important in some way. There aren't any wasted elements here. If something feels like a red herring, it will come back and be vital later on. Even things that I thought for sure were cool little Easter eggs or humorous additions, like these PS1 style prototype games, all have something hidden within that needs to be discovered. They do a great job of slowly opening up new areas and steadily increasing the puzzles so you don't get overwhelmed. But they also make sure you're getting the main pearls of wisdom along the way by testing you with these interrogation scenes, where if you get the answer wrong, you die and have to restart from the last save point. These moments are tense, but certainly seared into my brain what I needed to know to reach the finale. In fact, eventually you'll discover that the final roadblock you're working toward is a 3-level password for a supercomputer that includes symbols you may not even understand in order to beat the game. And it was so incredibly satisfying to finally get this code correct. It felt like all of my work to understand this world inside and out paid off. Seeing all the mazes, all the maps, all the books come together like a nice bow on top of the present, it's just sublime, man. If I had one nitpick about both of these games, however, it would be that it's hard to tell if a specific puzzle can be solved with all of the information present in the current room, or if you need to come back later with more acquired knowledge. There are both kinds of puzzles in Blue Prince and Lorelei, and while it's easy to assume there are multiple layers with these brain teasers because for the majority of them that's true, it can feel like a real forehead slap moment when you realize you could have solved something far easier if you had just known that the certain poster on the wall or a note on a desk applied directly to the puzzle in front of you. You just needed to look at it in a different light. But I'm not sure the best way this could be possible when the entirety of the game feels so interconnected. Maybe if there was an indicator that lets you know you already have all the information needed to solve a puzzle you're looking at, but I don't know if that would cheapen the eureka moments of putting the more complex riddles together for yourself. Either way, it only happened a few times in both experiences, amongst a sea of other head-scratchers that I was able to parse out on my own, which in retrospect really impressed myself with how far I had come interacting with this genre. I think my biggest takeaway is that I shouldn't be intimidated by quote-unquote harder puzzle games, because if they're designed well, they'll teach and prepare me properly along the way. And with both Blue Prince and Lorelei, I continued to churn on some of the puzzles after I stopped a play session. And I don't want to oversell it necessarily, but I think it ended up making me a smarter person, like in general, able to think critically about a large amount of information and connect the dots that previously seemed invisible. It's been very gratifying to see my progression from hating most puzzle games to trying out some of the easier ones to feeling confident enough to take on challenges like these. And if there are other titles out there that can offer the same level of fulfillment going forward, I am all in. Can you think of another puzzle game that left you feeling truly satisfied after beating it? One that caused you to think about the genre in a different way, or left an impression that lasted long after finishing? Let me know in the comments below and let's talk about it. If you haven't played Blue Prince or Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, I can't recommend them enough. And who knows, you may end up surprising yourself with your own ability to solve them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Stay frosty, my friends.